PFL Europe number 3 this Saturday, I do believe. Saturday from Glasgow, Scotland. In the main event, Stevie Ray will take on Lewis Long. In the co-main event, Robert Whiteford takes on Roger Huerta. Yes, the former next big thing in the UFC, and Roger Huerta, he was coined that by Dana White at one point in time, is now 42 years old, and he's fighting on a PFL Europe card against Robert Whiteford. I don't know how we got here, but we'll get to that fight when we get there in the co-main event. 14 fights on this PFL Europe card. And folks, if you have not yet, though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more MMA here on the channel. Again, we do UFC, Bellator, PFL, every single major MMA event we do here on the channel. As yesterday, we posted our UFC Paris full card predictions, of course, with Renato Moicano and Benoit Saint-Denis in the main event. As well as later this week, we will have our NFL predictions coming at you on Wednesday. And we will also have our college football predictions. Last week we had week 4, week 5 next week. Obviously on Tuesday tomorrow we will have our week 5 college football predictions. We've been hitting pretty well in the college football picks. Same with the MMA. Let's keep on going here with PFL as we start off with the first 4 fights of the night. Guys, these fights really don't matter because these aren't playoff fights. So we're gonna go over these really quickly because legitimately they really don't mean anything. First fight, Matisse Zarhovs taking on Brian Heislop. Probably butchered it. I tried to do a little bit of a Scottish accent there. I can't do it. But we're taking Matthias to win the fight by unanimous decision. Why? He is an SBG Ireland guy, and he's fought in PFL before. He fought Lewis McGrill and Evans in his last fight at PFL Europe 2. He lost the fight by unanimous decision, but this is a guy who's fought Anthony Pettis FC before. He's fought in Brave CF as well. Now, 2 fights ago, he was beating a guy who was 0-5 in Clan Wars. Great. But he's taking on Brian Heislop here, who lost his last fight to a 2-1 fighter, beat an 0-7 fighter before that, lost to a 7-3 guy, beat a guy who's 6-4-3. Yeah, again, no impressive stuff out of his resume. And you're going to see that a lot with PFL Europe. You're going to see fighters who have literally beat nobody, and they're just randomly in the PFL Europe promotion. Give me Matisse Zarhovs to win the fight by unanimous decision. Next up, Mark Ewan's taking on Yassin Chatou, who is 2-3-1. Now, Mark Ewan is not bad. He just lost one fight, his last fight, to Claudio Pacella by unanimous decision on the second PFL Europe card of this year. He fought in Bellator back in 2023, won a fight by second round TKO. He is not horrible. He hits with a lot of power. He's a guy who throws hard and can knock you out. And he's taken on a guy here in Yassin Chatou, who, again, has 2 wins in professional mixed martial arts, 3 losses, and 1 draw. He was 1-3-1 going into his last fight where he beat a guy who was 4-6-1. How did this guy make it to PFL Europe? I don't know. 3 straight losses by decision, rear naked choke, and armbar. 2 fights ago, he lost to a guy who was 0-2. How does this happen? Mark Ewan is by far the better mixed martial artist, and Mark Ewan will win the fight, and he will get it done by first round knockout. Again, he's fighting a guy who's 2-3-1. I don't understand the matchmaking. I don't get it. I'm blocking a little bit here, but we've got Gemma Old taking on Weronika Pietska. Guys, I'm sorry. I'm not from Europe. I cannot pronounce Polish names like that. I'm not Jan Blachowicz. Now, this is just a crapshoot, I'm gonna be honest with you. You got 2 fighters who have never fought in professional mixed martial arts before. These are 2 amateurs going into this one. One is a 6-0 amateur, and one is an 8-5 amateur. The 6-0 amateur is Gemma Old. I'm going to lean towards her to win the fight by unanimous decision. Now, you will hear broadcasters, and Daniel Cormier is a big, and Dominic Cruz will talk about this a lot when they're talking mixed martial arts, or at least just on the prelims when they really don't give a damn about the fight night card that's on right now. But both DCs, Dominic Cruz and Daniel Cormier, will talk about this, about how it's important to get as many amateur fights as you can before, again, you make your professional mixed martial arts debut. Because, again, the amateur fights, honestly, don't matter. They start to matter, again, when you finally make a professional fight because it's on your record forever. But the amateur fights, again, they don't matter. You don't get paid all that well, if at all. But still, you should take as many amateurs as possible just to gain the experience. Again, both these fighters now have finally made the jump to professional mixed martial arts. I just think Gemma Old is better. She's won 6 fights out of the 6 she's had. Weronika Pietska, probably butchered it, is 8-5, right? And she did start off her amateur days with 2 back-to-back losses, and that was all the way back in 2017. But still, again, just lost a fight 2 fights ago. Again, this is a crapshoot. Don't put money on this if you're actually betting on 2, fighters who are making their professional mixed martial arts debut. Don't do it. But I'm taking Gemma Old to win the fight by unanimous decision. Let's just hope right on that one. Next up, Lorenzo Parente taking on Jay Aspinwall. We're going with Lorenzo Parente to win the fight again out of Scotland. He's 3-0. He's won 3 fights against fighters who are 0-0, 0-2, and 4-14. So the level of competition is not it, but it's fine. He's taking on Jay Aspinwall from Wales, who's had 1 professional mixed martial arts win in Budo Fighting Championship, where he won a fight against a guy who was 1-5-1 by rear naked choke submission in the second round. These 2 guys have fought before. They fought in 2023 in an amateur fight. It was just 2 fights ago for Jay Aspinwall. Lorenzo Parente won the fight by armbar in the second round. I'd expect more of the same domination, but this time I think Parente gets it done on the feet. He's the better striker, and he should be able to go out here and knock out Aspinwall in the first round. So we're going Lorenzo Parente to win the fight by first round knockout. Okay, let's go on now to the, I guess, tournament fights here at the PFL. Now, most of these fights, I guess these are all semifinal fights. Most of these will have fighters that you've seen in PFL Europe before, but not this one. Dean Garrett takes on Federico Fiasco. No, it's definitely not Fiasco. Fasciano, I think. We're going to be going with Dean Garrett to win the fight by unanimous decision. He's just been more impressive, and the guys he has fought have been better than who Federico has beat. For the Italian, again, he's 6-1. His 1 loss is back in Venetor back in 2022. Venetor, not a horrible promotion. I would say most known probably for host or having Marvin Vittori. Obviously, Venetor is set in Italy. So no surprise that Federico came from the Venetor promotion. But in Venetor, he went 1-1, fought his last fight in the promotion called WOW. What is this? The War of Warrior? The Way of Warrior? He won his last fight by unanimous decision. You're looking at Dean Garrett, though. This is a guy who's fought in ACB before. Was he all that successful in ACB? No, he went 1-2 out there, but that's a better level. You can get a better understanding of how good Dean Garrett is because he's gone to ACB before, because he's fought in Bellator back in 2016. He has fought in Cage Warriors in the past as well. He has a win over Dominique Wooding by split decision in ACB in 2018 as well. Again, he's coming off a win in Brave in his last fight. Everything kind of points to Dean Garrett being the superior fighter in this one. And again, I believe the winner of this fight will go on to the PFL Europe Championship at 135 pounds. I don't know how we got to these guys, but we'll see the winner of this fight versus the winner of Julian Pierre Lopez and Alexander Luster later on in this card. But for now, we are going to be going with Dean Garrett to win this fight in his PFL debut. We're going to take him to win this one by unanimous decision. I think he's just got more skills. He's been able to go out there and get submissions in the past. He's the much more experienced fighter. He's the better fighter. He's the more well-balanced fighter. I just think Garrett has more opportunities to win this fight on both the feet and on the ground than the Italian and Federico does. Give me Dean Garrett to win this fight by unanimous decision. We go on to our next one here. We move to the women's 125-pound division. We've got Karolina Wojcik taking on Poliana Wisniewska. Yep, probably butchered it. But we've got 2 Polish fighters going at it here with the chance to fight for the PFL Women's 125-pound Championship. Obviously, a belt won last year by Dakota Dachiva. Obviously, you will see Dachiva's opponent last year in the finals in Valentina Scatizzi later on in this card. But you got Wojcik and you got Paulina Wisniewska. I don't know, guys. I don't know how to pronounce her name, but Poliana is 3-0 professionally. She's coming off of a win over D. Beagley, who is 4-5 going into that fight in PFL Europe. She fought a 4-5 fighter and won the fight by second round TKO. Like expected, right? Before Karolina, right? She's older, not by much. She's 29, but she's just the more experienced fighter. I'm going to take her, even though she has lost 5 times before in professional mixed martial arts. But she's 12-5. She's had 17 pro fights. And just look at the experience she's gotten. She beat Lizzie Gevers by unanimous decision, something that was not supposed to happen. She was not supposed to beat Gevers in that fight. I don't think so. Wojcik, I remember, was I think she opened the week as an underdog and then she closed as a favorite, but still, I think at the time, I picked Wojcik to win her fight, but I remember Gevers was, expected to do pretty well in that fight. Before that, for Wojcik, she lost in Invicta when she fought Danny McCormick for the Invicta Strawweight Championship, lost to Jasnita Austin and Octagon after that as well. But again, Wojcik has fought decent fighters before. Again, Danny McCormick's not a bad loss. She beat Gloria De Paula, a future UFC, or actually no, that was post Gloria De Paula in the UFC in 2022. She's fought in the Contender Series before as well. I just think Wojcik's better. Again, she's not going to get a finish or whatnot. That's just not what she does. Poliana might be a better striker, but in terms of a full-on mixed martial arts game, I am taking Karolina Wojcik to win the fight. Again, the experience is going to play dividends in this fight. She's had 17 pro fights, and Poliana's had 3. I mean, come on. again, Carolina's fought in Invicta before. She's fought in the Contender Series before. And now, again, you're adding the PFL to this as well. She is an underdog, at least on Tapology. 60% of voters are going with Poliana to win the fight. I'm going to be part of the 40% going with Carolina. I just think she's better all around. I'm going to take her to win the fight by unanimous decision. And again, I'm telling you, experience plays a big factor in this fight. Give me Carolina Wojcik to win the fight by unanimous decision. As we go on to our other women's flyweight bout, the winner of that last fight that we are predicting Carolina Wojcik to be will take on the winner of Chanel Dyer and Valentina Scatizzi. This one feels pretty obvious. It's going to be Valentina Scatizzi losing to Chanel Dyer. Yeah, definitely. Chanel Dyer, 5-0 as a pro. She feels like the fighter that the PFL is building this women's flyweight division around, at least in the PFL Europe, right? It feels like it, right? Dakota Dicheva obviously was their name last year. I feel like Chanel Dyer is kind of what they're building up for here. Chanel Dyer's 2-0 in the PFL, won in PFL Europe last year by unanimous decision, took a fight in Aries, won it by third round TKO, and then won by head kick in her last fight on the second PFL Europe card. Huge first round knockout victory for her. Chanel Dyer has very good striking skills for 125. She's got power for women's flyweight as well. And Valentina Scatizzi, who made it to the championship last year of PFL Europe by winning literally one fight over Lizzie Gevers. She beat Gevers by split decision. Then both of her fights got canceled because both of her opponents couldn't make it to the cage. She automatically advanced to the championship to take on Dakota Dicheva. Dicheva beat her by Dr. Stoppage at the end of the first round. Dicheva was, punching her face in for the first 5 minutes of the fight. Scatizzi comes back. She's a 2-2 fighter coming back for 2024. Wins her last fight by decision. Now here she is in the semifinals against Chanel Dyer. Dyer should absolutely dominate this fight, and it should not be competitive. I think Dyer goes out here and gets a finish in the first round. Guys, Valentina Scatizzi just isn't very good. If you take away the Dicheva loss, okay, again, she's 3-1 in MMA, but who's the other loss to? Samantha Jean-Francois, a French fighter who's 37 years old, who I think, again, I said it last time we talked about Valentina Scatizzi. Jean-Francois is most known for losing to Reina Kubota over in Ryzen back in the day in 2019. Guys, this is not a good fighter in Valentina Scatizzi. Chanel Dyer has way more skills. She hits way harder. She's the better striker. Again, Chanel Dyer will win the fight for the UK, and she will advance to the championship against one Carolina Wojcik. We're going with Chanel Dyer to advance and knock out Valentina Scatizzi or TKO her in the first round. We go to the lightweight division. We're going to get back-to-back fights here at the lightweight division, starting here with Connor Hughes and Ignacio Capella. Not a bad fight at all. You got Connor Hughes, who is 9-1, his only loss being to Dylan Tuck last year at PFL Europe 2, and Ignacio Capella, a guy who is 8-1, his only loss being his professional mixed martial arts debut back in 2014. This is a good fight. Capella finished and knocked out Yazid Kushain in his last fight with an uppercut in PFL Europe 1. He beat Ago Husik in Anthony Pettis FC back in 2022, a name you might remember fighting Brendan Loughnane in the PFL way back when. But Capella is not bad. This is a very good striker. He's from Spain. Connor Hughes is good in his own right, too, though. Hughes, again, is 2-1 in the PFL, losing his first fight to Dylan Tuck, but then winning back-to-back fights, his last one being a first-round knockout victory with an uppercut, again, on PFL Europe 1. This should be a barn burner. Connor Hughes has been very good on the feet so far in the PFL, but also, again, prior to making his PFL Europe debut, he was fighting in UK Fighting Championships, a lot of submissions in that promotion, a lot of first-round chokes. Rear naked choke, again, is his number one submission. And that's where I think Connor Hughes sets himself apart in this fight. I think all around he's better than Ignacio Capella. I think on the ground, that's where Connor Hughes is going to start to take advantage of this fight and start to take over this fight as well. On the field, I think they're very evenly matched. Connor Hughes has power, sure, but yeah, Ignacio Capella can put you out as well. These are two very good strikers, and I think, we'll see about our next lightweight fight. And, obviously we've got Jakub Kaszuba, and we're going to talk about him in a second. But I think, again, if you had to rank these guys in the PFL Europe Final Four, I put Connor Hughes and Ignacio Capella as 2 and 3. I think Scatizzi is probably the obvious 4 in this bunch. But it's a close fight for me. I think, again, where Connor Hughes does pull away in this fight is with his grappling. I think the striking is fairly even. Both these guys are good up there. Again, Capella can put you out. Same with Connor Hughes. But I think Connor Hughes has the way superior grappling game. We've seen him go in there in the past and, lock up quick submissions. I don't think he's able to get a finish in this one. But again, I think this is a fairly evenly matched fight on the feet. And where Connor Hughes will win and take over this fight will be on the ground. It's going to be Connor Hughes to pick up the win here in the lightweight division. He'll be taking on the winner of Jakub Kaszuba and Daniel Scatizzi. But but give me Connor Hughes by unanimous decision. As we go on to our next one here, we've got the reigning champion here at 155 pounds, and Jakub Kaszuba looking to defend his crown, taking on the Italian and Daniel Scatizzi, a fighter who, again, you might remember from the Bellator octagon or the Bellator cage. He won his last fight, though, in PFL Europe by heel hook, under 2 minutes, got the win in the first round. Again, Scatizzi's fought some notable names in Bellator. We're looking at Davy Gallon, who he beat by unanimous decision. Dmitry Hischenko beat him by unanimous decision. He lost to Alfie Davis back in 2019. He's taken on decent guys, Vladimir Tokov as well back in 2022. Scatizzi's fought Charlie Leary as well before heading into the PFL or heading into Bellator. Jahar Hussein Al-Sawali lost to, and Brave back in the day in 2017 as well. Like, Scatizzi has fought good guys, but he's always just been, good enough to get to the spot but just lose. That's kind of how Scatizzi's career has been so far. He's 12-7 as a pro. Again, he's been in competitive fights and he's been up against very good opponents, but again, he hasn't really had that one win to set him over the top just yet. And now he's taking on the undefeated fighter here in Jakub Kaszuba, who was in a battle. He was in a tough fight with Kane Musa in his last fight. He won it by unanimous decision. It is what it is. But Kaszuba, again, prior to the Musa fight, was dominant in PFL Europe last year, obviously winning the championship, beating John Mitchell in the final. Again, now he's defending his crown. He's defending the championship. I just think Kaszuba is better than Scatizzi. I think Scatizzi does leave a lot to be desired, and this is, again, a guy who has been put in these spots before against guys like Alfie Davis, against Vladimir Tokov, against Dmitry Hischenko, where he's been a big underdog. The only fight that he's ever cashed really as a big underdog will be the Davy Gallon fight. He was even going into his last one, but again, other than the Gallon fight, Scatizzi has been a big underdog before, and he just has not risen to the occasion. And I think he's just outmatched in this fight against a very technical guy in Jakub Kaszuba. I think Kaszuba does go out here and win the fight. I think he's the better striker. I think on the ground he's got some advantages as well. Don't get me wrong, Scatizzi's no slouch, but I just think as a whole, Kaszuba is the all-around way more balanced fighter, and he's just the all-around more technical fighter too. So it's going to be Jakub Kaszuba to win this fight. Obviously, again, he's looking to defend the championship in PFL Europe this year, and we think he will advance. I'm taking Kaszuba to beat Daniel Scatizzi, and we're taking him to move on to the finals against Connor Hughes, which is actually a really good fight for the lightweight crown. Either Kaszuba versus Hughes or Capella is a really good fight. I would be intrigued for either of them, but I think Kaszuba gets it done against Scatizzi, and I think Connor Hughes gets it done against Ignacio Capella. All right, we go back to the bantamweight division. We've got Julian Pierre Lopez taking on Alexander Luster. Again, we have the winner of this fight taking on Dean Garrett. And for the Frenchman here, Julian Pierre Lopez, this is a guy who's 7-3-1. He beat Dominique Wooding in his last fight by guillotine choke in the first round. Again, Wooding has been around the PFL scene for a little bit, or at least the British European MMA scene for quite a bit. And I thought Wooding was going to go out there and beat Pierre Lopez. He did not. Lopez got the submission in the first round, and that's where he is going to try to beat you. For the most part, is going to be on the ground. He has been subbed twice as well, and he's taken on a former UFC name as well you might have heard of, in Bernardo Sopaj, a guy who had his first fight in the UFC and lost in a very fun fight against one Vinicius Oliveira. Sopaj will be coming back later this year and taking on Ricky Tercios in the Apex. I believe that's UFC Apex 100. I think that's actually UFC Vegas 100. I think that's the actual title of that card. But anyways, Pierre Lopez, again, is coming off the victory over Dominique Wooding. He had a Cage Warriors victory prior to that where he beat a guy who was 5-0 at the time by second round TKO. But he's taking on Alexander Luster in this one, a guy who's 8-1 coming off of his first win in PFL Europe by first round submission. I don't know if this is a thing, but on his on his Tapology page, he is scheduled to fight again in December of 2024. So December 21st, 2024, he is scheduled to have a bout in GMC. It's a promotion he has fought in before. He beat Ben Davis back in 2022, a guy who was 8-5 at the time in GMC. But he won his first fight in the PFL Europe promotion, winning by rear naked choke in the first round. I think Luster's better. Again, we've seen Julian Pierre Lopez submitted before. We've seen him knocked out before. We've seen him submitted twice so far in his career, the last one coming in 2021 and in 2015 as well. So again, that's been a while, but still, within the last 3 years, Julian Pierre Lopez has been submitted by Alphon Rocher Labes, who is 11-3 now, fighting in the KSW promotion. But I think that's where Luster is able to win this fight. And this is where Luster is able to exploit. Pierre Lopez is going to be on the ground. And also on the feet, too. I wouldn't mind Alexander Luster either. I just think he's all around better than Julian Pierre Lopez. Lopez has been beat before. He's been finished on the feet and on the ground. I get it. Sopaj was the one guy to finish him in 20 seconds on the feet. Regardless, I do like Alexander Luster to win this fight. I think he's the better grappler. And I think on the feet, too, this fight's very close. I think Luster has more power, and he's got a better striking game, too. Give me Alexander Luster to win. We have him advancing to the PFL Europe Bantamweight Championship to take take on Dean Garrett. Yes, give me Alexander Luster, the German, to advance to the championship fight. We've got one more division left, and it's going to be the welterweight division. We will start first with Jack Grant taking on Florim Zendeli. We are taking Jack Grant to win the fight. Jack Grant's 20-8. Again, he's coming off that victory over Charlie Leary on PFL Europe 2. He's fought obviously on both PFL Europe cards so far this season. He had the very close fight with the Lazy King. Lost the fight by split decision, but a fight that he arguably could have won. And now, where is the Lazy King? I don't know. He has not fought since that Jack Grant fight. You would have liked to seen him on a card like this, but he's not on it. I don't know. Jack Grant, again, though, had a very close fight with Lazy King. He arguably won it. The PFL offered him another fight. He ended up beating Charlie Leary, and now he is in a spot where he's taking on Florim Zendeli for a chance to make it to the PFL Championship or PFL Europe Championship fight. Again, Jack Grant's a guy who's been around Cage Warriors for a while. He fought Ian Machado Gary back in 2021. He's fought decent guys. Fought Jai Herbert back in 2019. Obviously, again, he did lose both of those fights. But Jack Grant's always been a very tough out for a lot of fighters. He's a tricky guy on the ground who's got a very dynamic striking game as well. And he's taking on Florim Zendeli in this one. He's coming off a victory over a 6-4 Tomasz Langowski, who is 6-4 at the time. That win doesn't blow me away by any stretch of the imagination. I think Jack Grant's the all-around better fighter. Again, it's kind of the same logic we applied to that Carolina Wojcik fight versus Polyana. Again, you've got a fighter in Jack Grant who's had 28 professional fights. This is going to be fight number 29 for him, who's not over the hill at all. He's just fought really good guys over the course of his career, taking on a fighter, he and Florim, who's only had 10 professional fights. Again, it's not like Jack Grant's getting knocked out every single time he loses. No. 5 of his losses are by decision, like the fight against Lazy King, like the fight against Ian Machado Gary, right? I mean, he's had fights where he's taken good guys to the distance, and Jack Grant showed in his last fight, again, won by slam TKO over Charlie Leary. But again, as a whole, Jack Grant can really threaten you. He had a lot of success grappling against the Lazy King earlier this year, and I think, again, anywhere this fight goes, I like Jack Grant. I think he's able to grapple for him. I think he's able to strike with him as well. I just think Jack Grant as a whole is the much better fighter. Jack Grant should win, and he should move on to the PFL Europe Welterweight Championship to take on the winner of this fight, Ibrahim Man taking on Daniel Miceli. We are going with Man to win the fight. He comes into this fight with a record of 14-4. I was somewhat big on him going into his last fight, where he did go out and beat Chiquina Noso Pedro. Wasn't the best fight. It was a close fight that he ended up winning by split decision. Again, we expected the knockout from Man in that one, but now here he is in the featured bout of this PFL Europe card. Again, this is a guy who has fought Nurulson Ruzboyev back in 2021 in Brave. He lost the fight, but he is now on a 6-fight winning streak, and again, that last win being by split decision over Chiquena Noso Pedro. He gets Daniel Miceli in this fight, a guy who's fought in the Bellator cage before. He's 36 years of age. He's coming off a win over Yassin Najid by Von Fluchoke in the first round. Same guy who Mane has beat in the past as well. Miceli fought Peter Queally back in 2023. It was a no contest. It was a illegal kick to a down opponent. But again, Miceli was a huge dog going into that one. He's a plus 425 underdog in that fight. I don't know, Miceli, again, other than that win over Najid, he hasn't beaten anybody all that good. His only wins in the last 5 years, other than the Najid fight, are a 2-3 guy where he beat Bare Naked Choke, and then a Von Flue victory over a 10-17 guy. Again, Miceli is going to beat you if you hang on to a guillotine, but other than that, again, I don't think he's all that great. If you can keep this fight standing, he usually loses. Again, the same can be said about Ibrahim Man as well, who has lost 3 times by knockout in the past. Given against decent guys, though. Again, Nurulson Ruzboyev slammed him to victory. And then Alan Amadovsky, who, say what you want about his UFC run, Amadovsky, again, made it to the UFC at one point, and he knocked out Mane in Bellator in 12 seconds. Again, not a horrible loss, all things considered, considering, again, PFL Europe is just a bona fide and just an elevated regional fight card. So yes, Mane has been finished 3 times on the feet, but Daniel Miceli has been finished 5 times on the feet. He's been knocked out 5 times against guys like Daniel Scatizzi. I think Mane is the better striker. If Miceli can't take him down, which I'm not anticipating, he is going to be in for a long night on the feet against Ibrahim Man, or if it's not a long night, he's just going to get knocked out. And that's why we are going with Ibrahim Man to win the fight by first round knockout. I think he's got the way better hands. He's got the more explosive striking game as a whole. And as long as he keeps the fight on the feet, he should have his way. It's not like Miceli's going to throw anything really hard back at him to the point where he can knock out Mane. Mane should be fine. He should be able to find the knockout in his own right, and he should be able to advance to the welterweight PFL Europe Finals to take on Jack Grant. But now we go on. We are done with the season fights, and we go on to our co and our main event. First off, the co-main event with Robert Whiteford and Roger Huerta at catchweight 150 pounds. Both guys are 41 years old. They were born within a month of each other. Guys, what is going on here? Roger Huerta is 24-13-1 as a professional. He used to fight in the UFC once upon a time. Again, he beat Clay Guida in 2007 in the main event of the Ultimate Fighter 6 finale. Same card where War Machine won a fight in the UFC. If you don't know what happened to War Machine, there is a criminal psychology video on him. Go watch it. It's very interesting about War Machine after you're done watching this video. Just watch War Machine is a very interesting guy. Or I guess isn't a very interesting guy. He's not dead. But Roger Huerta submitted Clay Guida back in 2007 on the Ultimate Fighter finale. Then he came on, got a fight against Kenny Florian, a title eliminator, lost it by unanimous decision. Then lost to Gray Maynard and got cut from the UFC after that. He goes straight after that to Bellator, wins a fight, but loses to Pat Curran, loses to Eddie Alvarez, goes on to UWF, fights War Machine, loses by TKO. It was an injury, but still. Then goes to ONE FC, loses, wins a fight after that and won, but then drops back-to-back fights, wins another one in ONE FC, goes to Phoenix FC, wins a fight, comes back to Bellator, loses in a main event to Benson Henderson by second round submission, then gets knocked out against Patricky Pitbull, loses a unanimous decision to Sydney Outlaw, and his last fight in 2021, losing a fight by TKO to Chris Gonzalez. That's been Roger Huerta's career. And again, I just told you every single fight the guy has had since literally he was a fight away from fighting for the world championship in the UFC back in 2008. It's very interesting how careers go sometimes. Now, Huerta prior to his UFC days fought like Melvin Gillard, he fought Matt Wyman, but again, I wasn't really watching mixed martial arts in 2008, I'll be honest with you. I didn't really get into MMA until the first big fight I remember watching personally was, well, there's a couple, but John Jones, Lyoto Machida, Brock Lesnar, Shane Carwin, like those, John Jones, Vladimir Matyushenko. I do remember watching that fight. And given, yes, I was very young at the time, but I remember loading up UFC on Versus and watching that fight. I think it was on UFC on Versus. It was on one of those channels, or it was on, yeah, it was definitely not on Spike. I believe John Jones versus Vladimir Matyushenko was on UFC on Versus. But anyways, that's like one of the first main fights I remember watching, because again, that was on cable television, it wasn't on pay-per-view. Full transparency though, again, I wasn't really watching mixed martial arts when Roger Huerta was in the UFC, and again, I was very young at the time, but really the only fighters I really knew were the guys in the main event. So I didn't know anyone on the undercard. I knew who Randy Couture was. I remember watching Randy Couture getting front kicked in the face by Lyoto Machida as a kid, right? Like, I remember those fights, and again, yes, I've been watching MMA for a very long time, and again, I'm not that old, but still, I've kind of been watching since, again, the early-ish days of the UFC. But again, I remember watching, it's the Dana White video where he talks about, I forget, like, I think it's Vogue did a video, or GQ, one of those companies did a YouTube video with Dana White. And I understand I've not talked about Robert Whiteford yet. We will get to Robert Whiteford in a second. But they did an interview with Dana White, or it's just a game, like a little trivia thing, where Dana White's trying to name random tattoos on fighters, right? And Roger Huerta comes up. And Dana White says something along the lines of, yeah, Roger Huerta, he was supposed to be the next big thing in the UFC. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Sometimes, I believe I might, mix up this quote a little bit, but the quote was, sometimes you think some of these guys are the next big thing in the sport, and all of a sudden they just can't win a fight. And that's kind of what happened to Roger Huerta. Now, again, lost to Ken Flo and Gray Maynard, but then again, went outside the UFC and didn't find any success in Bellator. Again, lost to War Machine in 2011. I believe that was the fight that War Machine had when he was already supposed to go to prison, and he had that fight before he went to prison. I think that's how that went. Again, go watch that War Machine criminal psychology video. It's interesting. But Roger Huerta, again, was supposed to be the guy at one point in time, and then he just turned out again to just be a UFC washout. And at the age of 41 years old, he's taking on Robert Whiteford, who I have not talked about yet, but Robert Whiteford is another UFC washout as well. Had his last UFC fight in 2016, losing it to Lucas Martins on a UFC Fight Night card that was main evented by Ben Rothwell and Junior Dos Santos in Croatia. Remember when the UFC used to go everywhere in the world? Yeah, remember they had fight nights in Croatia? Now we're just in the Apex every damn week. Anyways, but again, that's when Whiteford had his last fight in the UFC, beat Daniel Pineda back in 2014. He's, again, since then gone to ACB, won some fights, beat Kane Musa, went to Bellator, won a fight by third round TKO, lost to Daniel White in his last fight in 2022, he got knocked out. But both these guys are back. I'm going to side towards Robert Whiteford. I think he's going to win. Again, I think he'll win the fight by first round knockout. Roger Huerta is a guy who's been finished 6 times, and just recently he's looked really bad. Patricky Pitbull knocked him out. Chris Gonzalez, who's not a world beater, who lost to Tim Wilde in his last fight, was able to beat up Roger Huerta and TKO him in the 3rd round. Everything kind of points to Robert Whiteford winning this fight, and it's not like Whiteford's ever been a world beater, but he's at home in Scotland. He's the guy expected to win, like in our main event with Stevie Ray. I would just expect Whiteford to win. I think he's got a little bit more left in the tank than what Huerta has. I think his striking is better than than Huerta's, and if Whiteford has to go to the ground as well, I think he's going to be able to really do well on the ground using his grappling effectively against Huerta as well. So give me the Scottish fighter Robert Huerta to win the fight by first round TKO. As we go on to our main event, in the welterweight division, Stevie Ray takes on Lewis Long. Again, the reason this fight's in the main event, again, is because Stevie Ray is from Scotland, and we have not seen this guy since he competed in the 2023 PFL season, where he lost back-to-back fights to Natan Schultz and to Clay Collard. The Collard fight, he got TKO'd in the 2nd round. Don't forget, Stevie Ray in 2022 was fighting for the World Championship in PFL, though. He lost to Olivier Aben-Mercier by TKO in the 2nd round, got caught with the hook and put away the same season where Stevie Ray made the playoffs by beating Anthony Pettis with, they're going to call it a modified twister, but just kind of like a weird body lock that he submitted Pettis in. Got to fight him again in the playoffs, beat him, and then fought Olivier Aben-Mercier and lost in the championship fight. Again, Stevie Ray is a guy who's fought in the UFC before as well. His last fight was in 2019 where he lost to Leo Santos by first round knockout. It was on a UFC Fight Night card in Stockholm, Sweden. Again, remember when the UFC went everywhere? Yeah, me too. Alexander Gustafsson and Lionheart Smith main evented that card. He's taking on 35 Lewis Long, though. A guy who's coming out of Wales. Had his last fight in 2022 where he lost to Thibaut Gauthier by unanimous decision. Won 2 fights before that, back-to-back in Bellator as well. Lost to Oliver Enkamp in Bellator also. Roberto Soldic beat him in Cage Warriors in 2017 by 42nd knockout. Again, when in doubt, pick the Scottish fighter. They're at home. Stevie Ray's supposed to win this fight. Stevie Ray wasn't awful in the UFC. This is a guy who's 7-4 out there. He's 2-4 now in the PFL, but look at the guys he's lost to. Alex Martinez, again, had his little runs in the PFL seasons way back when. OAM's the PFL GOAT. Natan Schultz was very good in the PFL before they released him, and Clay Collard, again, is just a staple of the PFL 155-pound division. So I don't think those are bad losses at all. Lewis Long's just a guy who, yeah, he can beat you on the ground, but Stevie Ray is a very credentialed grappler as well, who should be just fine grappling with Lewis Long also. I think we're fine picking Stevie Ray in this fight. He's expected to win it. He's the younger fighter given by 1 year, but still, again, Stevie Ray is the guy that they built this entire card around, him and Whiteford, and he should go out there and beat Lewis Long, who's never really never been much in his MMA career so far. No disrespect, but again, we're picking fights here, and Stevie Ray is the A side of this equation, and Stevie Ray's always been the better fighter than Lewis Long, and he should go out here and dominate on the ground. I think Stevie Ray's a superior grappler. He should be able to ride that to a decision victory over Lewis Long. So folks, thank you all for watching our PFL Europe 3 predictions here on the channel. We'll be back for the next PFL Europe card in December. In France, I would expect Cedric Doumbé. I would expect Lazy King on that card. Again, at the end of the year, that's where I would expect Anthony Pettis versus Cedric Doumbé in the main event. We'll be back for more PFL in a couple weeks where Francis Ngannou takes on Renan Ferreira. All of a sudden, that's a stacked card with Chris Cyborg, Luisa Pacheco, Johnny Eblin, Fabian Edwards, and AJ McKee taking on Paul Hughes. We'll have more UFC next week, of course, as that's coming at you weekly on the channel as well. Folks, thank you all for watching. Make sure that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to go check out our UFC Paris France predictions again with Renato Moicano and Benoit Saint-Denis in the main event. Folks, thank you all for watching. Make sure that subscribe button down below for more, and Mamba forever.